Welcome, everyone. I'm calling to order this meeting. It is 1:32 p.m. As a reminder, please turn off all cell phones and limit any background noise. If you are on Zoom, please mute yourself and leave all questions to the end of each presentation.
I'll be taking roll call. When I say your name, please say here present, state if you are with any organization, and give a brief introduction of who you are and a description of yourself. Laura Saltzman.
Here. Here. My name is Laura Saltzman. I'm the chair of the committee. I am a white woman in her 30s. I have brown hair that's tied up and a dress that's like black with white stripes.
Cynthia Fosco has an excused absence. Sara Luna.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sara Luna. I'm a board member of the National Federation of the Blind of Illinois, as well as a member of the ADA Advisory Committee. I am a Afro-Latina female in my late 20s with my hair pulled back and a bright pink shirt. Glad to be here with all of you.
Barbara Padilla.
Barbara's here. I'm Barbara Padilla. I am with LCM Architects, a member of the CTA Accessibility Advisory Committee. I have blondish hair and glasses, and I'm kind of wearing a blue t-shirt today.
Sandra Fernandez. Not present. Dr. Delphine Lab.
Hello, here. My name is Delphine Labe. I'm a professor in the Department of Disability and Human Development and a member of the CTA ADA Advisory Committee. I am a female in my 40s with hair in a ponytail, today brown hair, white t-shirt, and a purplish sweater.
Thank you. Johnny Gonzalez, not present. Giselle Nunes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Giselle, and I am representing from the City Colleges of Chicago, and I am a Latina wearing a blue sweater with my hair pulled back.
Ada Thompson. She's here. Jada, can you hear us? She's present, I just can't. You're still on mute, Jada. We'll come back. Zoe? There's someone in there. All right, absent. Milton Lash? Also absent. We do not have a quorum today, so we will not be voting on the minutes or the 2026 date. A special meeting will be called for that. Announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? No announcements? Next up was approval of the meeting minutes, but we will not be voting on that. So on to public comment. There's no public comment today.
There's no public comment. Okay, then we will go with presentations. First is the 2025 biannual survey and people disability focus group presented by Jack Hogan, coordinator, market research.
Well, thank you for having me, everyone. Let me just get this set up really quickly and share my screen.
And Jack, can you state your name and your position for the recorder, please?
Yes, my name is Jack Hogan, and I am the coordinator of market research here at the CTA.
And I'm Emily Drexler. I'm the Senior Manager for Customer Insights and Strategy at CTA. Jack's on my team. And I am a white female in my 30s. I have brown wavy hair and a white shirt today.
Okay, so before we get started, and hi, I'm Molly Poppy. I'm the Chief Planning and Innovation Officer for CTA. I'm wearing a white shirt of sorts. I'm in my mid-30s, and I have my hair up as well. So before Jack and Emily get started, I just wanted to sort of give an update on how we are thinking about surveys and how we approach customer feedback generally. So when we look at,
There's a double sound right now.
it's open.
It's just the biannual.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah. It's the wrong.
Since the start of COVID, we really started to take a systematic approach to our surveys. We started doing more regular surveys of our customers, and we started to expand the types of information that we wanted to know from riders and make sure that we have all the appropriate background and information. So we did start this back in 2020. And we've continued, we were doing it quarterly for a couple of years, and then we really expanded into looking at doing something. We were doing it every 6 months, but then we started to fill in those results with focus groups. We also started filling in the results with the chatbot was launched as well. So we got more information from the chatbot. And then we also have some customer surveys that are on our Pink Line trains, at our Pink Line stations, and also on our buses that allow for like on the spot surveys. So we've been doing both of those, doing all of those to really enhance how we hear about customers and the customer feedback. And then we've also been supplementing all of these surveys with different public engagements over the last couple of months. So we did the CTA Chats events where we heard from 1,500 people at 18 different CTA Chats. These are locations, stations, and bus turnarounds throughout our system throughout the summer. And then we also had 3 budget town halls, very similar to the ADA, combined ADA Citizens Advisory Board budget meeting that we had last week. And we had over 400 attendees at those three events. All right. Jack, Emily, I gave a long preamble. I apologize.
Yeah.
Oh, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're just setting up our screen here. Should be ready in a second. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're going to be going over some of our findings from focus groups that we conducted recently, as well as our biannual pulse survey. So to start with our focus groups, overall, we set out with the objective of just understanding the unique experiences and needs of our riders with disabilities and how they use our system. This was moderated by our partners at RSG. We recorded all meetings, had staff observing the focus groups, and just a little insight on who we interviewed. We interviewed a group of a mix of incomes, gender, age, different races and ethnicity, as well as a variety of car ownership as well. I think there were 11 who had access to a car, 5 have no vehicle access. And we interviewed a variety of disability types. So many of the disabilities were not mutually exclusive. So we had a lot of people who had mobility issues along with difficulty hearing or seeing, as well as difficulty understanding information and regulating emotions. And we had one service animal user. Overall, a big takeaway from these focus groups was that the CTA really is a lifeline that makes daily life possible for riders with disabilities. It provides a lot more flexibility than what they can get from just paratransit. And it really is an important part of their lives in getting independence. So we had 4 themes emerge from these focus groups on what we can do to serve people with disabilities better in our system. And the first theme is there's this need for clearer, more readily available information. So this includes signage at bus stops and rail stations, as well as the audio announcements that they're hearing, both at the stops and on board. There's challenges described with audio announcements sometimes just not being available or being inaccurate. Signage, there were some discussions about how the text is too small on some of the bus signs, and they're a bit overcomplicated with detail. Next, the physical environment of the stations themselves. Oh, yeah.
Can I just ask that you read out, like if there's a quote on the slide, just if you can also read it out.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry.
So should I read each one or just one per slide?
Yes.
For accessibility purposes, that would be good.
Absolutely. Okay. So when we talk about the value of CTA in providing independence, we have these quotes here. I feel at home on the CTA. I can go anywhere. Another person saying, CTA gives me my independence. I don't have to rely on somebody giving me a ride or ask for favors from people. And then another person said, owning a car while on disability is something I can't afford, so I need to live in a place where public transit exists. And then when we get into the topic of more information, this person said, I want more signs, especially signs that say which way to go, for elevators or escalators, right? Underground. So there's just that desire for more and clearer signage. The next theme that we got out of these focus groups was this theme of the physical environment at stops and stations themselves. It has a lot more impact on riders with disabilities than some of us might think just on surface level. There are challenges with elevators, sometimes being broken or being unsanitary. We also heard a lot about escalators and how some escalators, Clinton Blue Line Station was mentioned specifically, there's this feeling that escalators are too steep and some escalators are almost unrideable and unusable just because they're too steep. And this isn't just a challenge that people with wheelchairs are facing. It is a much bigger challenge, I think, than we expected before going into these focus groups. There's also this need for level boarding, and lighting came up a lot as something that's very important for people who have difficulty with vision. So some quotes, the Harlem Blue Line stop is 10 blocks away, but at night, I literally cannot go there because it's super dark outside. Another person said, I prefer taking the red line. I can usually roll on stations, when they're level with the train. It's nice when I don't need a ramp. Third theme that we found was really related to other riders on the system. So there are challenges with routing on the buses and trains. And there's just this challenge of other riders creating obstacles for our riders with disabilities. There are other riders who blocks the disability seating. Strollers came up a lot as something that takes up a lot of space, making it difficult for people with disabilities to even ride the bus at all. And this is a challenge that has a strong influence on how they ride. If a bus pulls up and it looks too crowded, they will wait for the next bus because crowding is a very big issue. It's much more than just an inconvenience. This person said, when the bus is super crowded and people refuse to move from the front, I cannot get off the bus. People do not want to move. So there's just this issue of other riders, which brings us to our next theme, that riders with disabilities, they very much depend on support from the operators. They need help from operators with managing crowd control, as well as the need to kneel the bus to deploy ramps. There were some mentions of bus operators sometimes not doing that, and just really enforce priority seating and help our riders with disabilities out. There was also a bit of frustration from participants in our focus groups who have invisible disabilities. If someone is blind, they might get accused of not reading a sign because the operator isn't aware they are unable to read a sign. And same with hearing. Some riders who have difficulty hearing are accused of not listening when they simply have a disability. We have this quote here, they get upset that I can't hear them, and I ask them to repeat themselves until I say, I'm sorry, let me show you my hearing aid. So there really is that need to really improve training for our operators. So in summary, our four themes are this need for clear, readily available information, well-maintained audio systems that are accurately and clearly stating when the next stop is, a need for improving infrastructure conditions at the stops and stations, this need to better control crowding and ensure that riders with disabilities are not being held back from riding because of other riders crowding and taking up priority seating, and just this desire for more training for our operators on how to handle situations with people with disabilities. So, some last quotes from this report. When the bus is super crowded and people refuse to move from the front, I cannot get off the bus. People do not want to move. And then again, just this person saying in response to operators, they get upset that I can't hear them.
I'm going to talk quickly about a working group that we kicked off in the Planning and Innovation Department, and then I'll kick it back over to Jack to go over the customer survey results. But in August of this year, we started an internal customers with disabilities working group with staff across the agency. It's part of a series of working groups to help improve the rider experience for different customer cohorts. So we brought together people from our operations group, EEO, technology, planning, training, and workforce development, communications, probably a couple of other departments I'm not remembering at the moment. And we have one participant from CDOT who's joining this internal working group too. So currently we're in the process of conducting a couple of fact-finding sessions to make sure that we're all on the same page about things like the ASAP plan, existing projects that impacts customers with disabilities. And then later this week, we're also going to be hearing from our consultants on the focus groups that Jack just presented on to really hear that voice of our rider. We're also hearing from peer agencies and some advocacy groups. So the goal of this working group is really to identify a couple of projects. The hope is about 3 projects that will help us to improve the rider experience based on these, different inputs from the types of groups I just mentioned. And we ran a similar group earlier this year focused on language access. And for that group, we were able to identify a couple of different projects. One thing that we heard through that group is that riders who don't speak English have difficulty communicating with personnel at stations, for example. So one of the projects that we're launching through our Innovation Studio program is to help bring in some translation devices to the station. And these could also potentially function for riders who may need ASL translation too. So right now that sort of problem statement is out to the business community. We'll see what kind of proposals we get, but the hope is to pilot a device or 2 at different stations to help ease that experience of communication between riders who don't speak English and our station attendants who don't really have great tools right now to support those riders. So that's just an example from our last working group. The Customers with Disabilities working group is still in progress. And so we hope to maybe come back to you all and share some of the outputs of that working group later on. Go back. All right, we'll shift back over to the customer survey results.
All right, so these are our customer survey results from our spring biannual of 2025. So this is a survey that we ran from mid-May to the 20th of June. We sent survey invites to about 35,000 respondents and got a total of 1,911 completes. We interviewed both frequent and infrequent riders in this survey, made it available in English, Spanish, and Polish. And we sampled this survey proportional to the population size of each zip code in our service area, and then also weighted our final data against ridership on bus routes and rail branches to align with our system's ridership. Satisfaction with the CTA is at 69%, which is an increase from last spring by 8 percentage points. In spring 2024, we were at 61%. This still has not reached.
Yeah, sorry, do you have a question, Laura?
Can you read what's on the slide?
Yeah, yes, definitely. So this still has not reached 2018 ridership satisfaction levels, which were 73%. So if we look back at how we track satisfaction with this survey, 2018, we were at 73%. In 2021, it was up to 85%. We then ran this survey again in 2022. And in 2022, our customer satisfaction was 74%. We ran it each quarter of 2023. So it went from 59% to 63% to 70% to 67% in 2023, 61% in spring of 2024, 71% in fall of 2024. And that gets us to our 69% now. So we interviewed frequent and infrequent riders, and we found that frequent riders are actually less satisfied than infrequent riders. And there's a nuance to this, that it's frequent train ridership that specifically drives down satisfaction with the system overall. The more one rides the train, the lower their satisfaction with the overall system is likely to be. So I'll compare frequency of ridership with the 69% overall satisfaction this year. So overall, infrequent CTA riders, 72% are satisfied, up 7% since last spring. Frequent riders, 68% are satisfied, which is up 8%, but still a little less than infrequent. Infrequent bus riders at 69%, up 7%. Infrequent train riders are at 74%, up by 8%. Frequent bus riders, 71%, up by 9%. And frequent train riders, so this is going to be the lowest satisfaction, is at 65%, up by 10%, which is still a pretty big increase from last year. Satisfaction on all bus attributes is up, with the exception of ease of boarding and exiting the bus, which is 91% and remains unchanged from last year. So everything else has increased by 3 to 9%. So in order from what they're mostly satisfied with, we have ease of boarding, travel speed on the bus, availability of seats, personal security on the way to and from the bus stop. So all of those attributes are 83% satisfaction or higher. Personal security on the bus, then security at the bus stop, and cleanliness of the bus interior. Those come next. Those are 70% or higher. And then wait time for the next bus is at 68% satisfaction. Real-time arrival information accuracy, 67% satisfaction. And reliability of bus service is 63% satisfaction. Wait time, accuracy of information, and reliability have all increased the most, despite being the biggest challenges with the bus. Each of these has increased by 9%, and riders are very eager for more bus service. We have some open-end responses. Need more bus route options to the north side from Lakeshore East area. Bus rapid transit along major artery roads would make the bus more desirable to take by increasing speed and frequency. When there are concerts or events at Soldier Field, I suggest deploying more of the 146 bus, as they can easily become full. So next, satisfaction with train attributes has also increased on every metric compared to last spring. So again, I'll go from highest satisfaction to lowest satisfaction. Ease of boarding and exiting the train, 92% are satisfied, and that's up by 3% since last spring. Then we have travel speed on the train at 87%. Availability of seats on the train and accuracy of information are 78 and 79%. Wait time for next train, security on the way to and from the train station, and reliability of service are all 71%. Security at the station is 60%. Cleanliness of stations is 53%. And then security on the train and cleanliness of the train interior. These are at the bottom of the list, and these have both increased by 2 to 4 percentage points. However, these are 41% satisfied with cleanliness and 46% satisfied with security. So that is an opportunity area to improve for the train, especially because safety on the train, that has a big influence on how people ride. So we have some quotes here. I won't take the train after 7 p.m. because I don't feel safe. I refuse to ever get on the red line due to the violence. If trains were safer and cleaner, I would definitely use them more. The red line is out of control. I would rather walk in the snow or rain. It smells, it is dangerous, and I feel threatened every time. So safety is something that if a rider is dissatisfied with it, it's going to influence their ridership overall. And train riders really need assurance that authority figures are going to enforce the rules. And they prefer police or CTA personnel to do this, preferred over security contractors. So we had them rank how much different factors would make them feel safer. So the top 5 ranked, I'll go from highest to lowest. Fewer passengers using alcohol, tobacco, or drugs. If more CTA personnel addressed unsafe behavior. Direct outreach for riders experiencing homelessness, mental illness, or substance abuse. Those are the top 3. Then after that, we have Chicago Police Department on trains and stations, and CTA personnel at the train and at stations. We asked what would make them feel safer as a multiple response question. 64% say they'll feel safer with more CPD officers. 61% would feel safer with CTA personnel. 48% unarmed security, 44% K9 units, and then 24% would feel safer just with more passengers. We also asked about cleanliness. 89% are dissatisfied with the odors on the train, and that's the top contributor to their perceptions that the train's not cleanly. After that, litter, hygiene of seats, hygiene of surfaces, and spills, those also contribute to perceptions of an uncleanly train experience, and those all range from 78 to 70%. We have some quotes. More personnel that actually cares and does their job. That's something that respondents are requesting. And then this other quote, passengers smoking and nothing is done to stop it. So there are different metrics that influence ridership. Just because someone is dissatisfied with something doesn't necessarily mean they're going to ride significantly less because of it. And we looked at this for the bus and the train. So most bus riders are dissatisfied with at least one of those 11 attributes that we went over. And of those who are dissatisfied, so 67% are dissatisfied. Then 9% are riding significantly less as a result. And what really influences decreased ridership on the bus, it's wait times, reliability, accuracy, cleanliness, and then security both at the bus stop and on the bus itself. So when we look at the top metrics that they're dissatisfied with, wait time for the bus on the weekend, reliability, accuracy, and cleanliness of the bus interior, those all have 30% to 40% of riders dissatisfied. And among them, we lose about 4% each ridership. So about 4% of the total of bus riders we're losing ridership from because of dissatisfaction with these. Personal security at the bus stop and personal security on the bus, 4% of our total riders are also riding less because of that. Everything else, only 3% or less are losing ridership. If we look at personal security on the bus and security on the way to and from the bus stop, and we take just the group of people who are dissatisfied with these metrics, that has the strongest influence of all on their ridership. So 18% of those who are dissatisfied with security are going to ride less, even though it's not something the majority are dissatisfied with. It has a stronger impact on those who are dissatisfied. Compared to the bus, the train has an even bigger frequency of decreased ridership because of dissatisfaction. So 77% of train riders are dissatisfied with at least one of the attributes. And among them, 17% ride significantly less. And unlike the bus, where it was a little bit of everything, with the train, the top reason for riding with the train less, it's personal security. So to prevent customers from riding the train less, it's going to be really important to improve security and cleanliness. And it's also going to be important to make boarding the train easier. And I'll go into why that boarding of the train is important. So when we look at the list of what are they most dissatisfied with, cleanliness, personal security, both within the train and at stations, those are the top complaints that people have, what they're most dissatisfied with. We lose 13% of riders due to personal security on the train dissatisfaction. However, only 8% of our total ridership is dissatisfied with ease of boarding, but that ease of boarding has the largest impact of all. If we look at it just as a group, just as those who are dissatisfied with the ease of boarding, 37% of that group of riders is going to ride significantly less due to their dissatisfaction. So although security is probably the most prominent issue, really it's important to look at all these attributes. So a quick summary of our takeaways. 69% of riders are satisfied with CTA service overall, an increase from 61% in spring 2024. Train ridership drag satisfaction. The more frequently someone rides the L, the lower their satisfaction with the overall system. Security on the train is the CTA's top challenge this spring. And along with cleanliness, it stems from a perceived lack of enforcement of the rules. So the CTA can really improve on this just by continuing to focus on our security initiatives, like our no smoking campaigns, our partnerships with CPD, which we are currently doing. There's a desire for bus expansion. The bus has improved on most metrics. It's safer than it was even before the pandemic, and many riders express a desire for even more bus service. Satisfaction with bus wait times, arrival information, and reliability have each increased by 9 points since last spring, though these do remain challenges. And the CTA can continue to leverage our bus vision study and other initiatives to identify opportunities to better serve additional customer destinations and to identify opportunities for express service. And that summarizes our biannual results.
Have any questions?
Yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah. I want to go back to the customer experience working groups. Just because you discussed some ideas that are like this idea generation and maybe proposing some idea, and you give us the example of the access to language. And I just want to make sure how much there's communication between different staff as well, or like that you're aware of what's already been done and maybe like using ideas. And I just because at the last wayfinding committee, Tony presented us a really nice little device that he built that was for the audio information, but it had multiple language that was already providing a lot of what you discussed. And I would just want to make sure that where's that synergy and I was talking too, because with the wayfinding subcommittee, the accessibility committee, but I think in the wayfinding, we're really focused on many solution oriented. So might be a place where you might also want to come and present. Talk with Irma about that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the point of these working groups is to make sure that we're all talking to each other across different departments. So Tony did participate on the language access group, and there's somebody else from his department that's on this customers with disabilities working group. But yeah, we're kind of in that like making sure we're all on the same page phase, where we're talking about like what is happening at the agency, what's the great work we're already doing, and how can we learn sort of like from outside the agency as well to do more projects and better projects. So, but thank you for reminding me about the wayfinding subcommittee. I think I've attended before, and we should make sure that we're going and listening and know what's going on with the committee too. Thank you.
I have questions, but does anyone have questions online? Going once? Sarah, do you have any questions?
No.
So a couple of ones. Oh, by the way, there's like another slide, right? Because there's the key takeaways, the car owner.
Yeah, there's one more. I think just for brevity, we wanted to make sure that you guys have time for your other presentations.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. So did you talk to, for the customers with disability survey, were there folks, and I realize this might be harder for CTA directly to reach out to, were there folks like who had specific, like that you talked to who would like to use CTA, but there were specific barriers that were maybe seemed more fixable and they couldn't, or like, or that they wrote it a little bit, but like with these improvements, I could take the train or I could take the bus, but for this needing to be fixed.
You're talking about with the focus group that we did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So there's actually a range of suggestions that came up and probably a range of feasibility for them too. I guess some of the probably quicker fixes would be just really ensuring more maintenance of our audio announcement systems. In addition to that, some of the more probably not as easy to fix, but bus design, layout design, if there's a way to make strollers more compatible with the overall bus so that everyone can fit along with they talked about some really large strollers. And then signage, both at stations and bus stops. And we're actually doing a study pretty soon on potential ways to simplify bus stop signs. So they said that the text specifically on bus stop signs is hard to read because it's too small and it's too detailed. So any ways to simplify bus stop signage. And then for stations, it's that they just wanted more signage altogether. They want clearer signs of which way to the elevator, which street does this go to? And I know that there is some of that signage is there, but just ways to make it even clearer.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that can be then used to broadly inform whether it's CTA or other agencies on where there might be impediments to improve transit access. I think that would be very valuable beyond.
Yeah, I think one other thing we heard is like some of the people in the focus group, they live in places where they have access to Metro and Pace services too. And they talked a little bit about like on the weekends, for example, they might want to travel somewhere and CTA was available, but Pace and Metro wasn't. So that limited their accessibility and their ability to use CTA as much as they wanted because they couldn't maybe get to CTA to take it.
Right. And that's an interesting kind of thing to compare. I'm wondering with the bus signage for it being simpler, are you guys factoring in the new bus stop, rail stop signs where it's the stickers that have the additional information, like the direction, and because that will have a simpler kind of bit of information.
The tile signs?
Yes.
Okay. It took me a second. I was like, wait.
I was picturing it, but that's not helpful.
Yeah, we haven't gotten started with the research yet, but yeah, that is a sort of something we probably should ask folks about with the tactiles as well.
Well, because like, I'm just thinking like, you are going to be, the idea is that those signs would also be provided. So if it's something where you're already going to be providing these simpler signs. And then, I don't know if you mentioned, how often does this group meet? How often, you can't see where I'm looking. How often does the working group meet?
Yeah, so we kicked it off in August, and the hope is that we would wrap up the group in December. So what is that, October? Like 4 months or so. We're meeting every like 3-ish weeks. The cadence is kind of dependent on like when people are available. I think we've met 3 times so far and have maybe another 5 or 6 sessions planned.
Okay. And how it's coming with the language access working group that we're doing is the group all comes together, we decide projects, and then there's been ongoing meetings with all the different projects that are moving. So it's like we sort of all come together, focus, let's come up with solutions, let's work together. And then there's more meetings, more conversations happening then as projects are getting developed. And then as we continue to move forward, we think of ways to tie back and come back to the group.
This can be a longer conversation, but can I raise, and I appreciate that CDOT is attending, but before the end, that other additional folks at CDOT get presented to or get looped in and leadership, I think it is important that this is happening. And I think CDOT wants to show their commitment. It is important that additional folks are there to discuss.
Absolutely. Just on your question, I think on regionalization, so we do share our survey results with RTA. So we do have conversations with RTA and Metro and Pace about, our survey results. So we do have that. I think Emily, you presented the survey results. Was it last week?
Yeah, there was an RTA meeting. They did like their Transportation Tuesday webinar, and they presented some regional customer survey results, and I presented the focus groups. It wasn't just the customers with disabilities focus group. We've run some other sessions too that we did 5 topics all together. So I presented on all of those.
Okay. Thanks. Sarah?
I thought it was interesting that y'all said that the survey was available in English, Spanish, and Polish. I think I was just surprised to see Polish and not Chinese. And so I was just wondering like how that decision was made and if y'all would consider adding Chinese for the future surveys.
Yeah, on the language front, we have been trying to offer our surveys in more languages. We added in Polish a little while ago, according to our LEP plan. But yeah, you're right. Chinese is another language. That's one of the top in the service area.
I think Polish is the 3rd most common. It's English, Spanish, Polish in terms of frequency.
And Arabic is up there too.
Yes, it is. It is surprising to folks, but that would be why it was up there, I think.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Just because you mentioned that you're doing 5 other focus groups, and I'm interested to know where's the commonalities across your groups, because I think if you can also have, I guess that is probably what we looked at, but I would have loved to see things that have been raised by people with disability. It's just the ease of boarding that came up as one of the most satisfying things and led people to not take the train. For people with disability, this is also a very important factor. So where allows you to nail on things when there's really confluence of perceptions or opinions on some things. But is there some things that come to your mind across the groups that?
Safety came up in a lot of the groups. So the topics were, we did one with Spanish speaking riders. We did this customers with disabilities. We did personal security as like a standalone. So obviously it came up in that. What were other ones? We did a group on caretakers, like people that ride, taking care of small children or an elderly parent or someone with disabilities. And then we also did a group on women and non-binary riders. But yeah, I think you're right. Stepping back and looking at all of them and thinking about what are those overlapping themes would be a useful exercise. Personal security definitely came up in all of them, and obviously came up in our survey a lot. That's kind of what comes to mind right now.
Absolutely.
I think the others would be, it's personal security, cleanliness, and service reliability frequency. Like, it's those four, no matter where you go, that's what you're gonna hear. And then to your point, like ease of boarding, it's people are very satisfied with it, but Jack did a good job of calling out. There's a group of people that, while ease of boarding people are very satisfied with, when you are dissatisfied, it not only makes you not ride less, it clearly is you're unable to ride. It's not really a ride less, it's you're unable to ride is the answer there. And so I think as we look at our results, we sort of, the four things that always rise: security, cleanliness, reliability, and frequency. That's sort of across the board. And then there's these very specific sort of lanes of issues that maybe are not, people are super dissatisfied with, but we recognize that they have unique impacts on unique riders. And so I think that's why what you see out of the working groups and the work that Emily and Jack are doing is helping to distill that information down to we know we need to focus on these four things, but there's also some very specific targeted approaches that we need to take.
I do think it's important, someone who takes the trains, it does tend to be very crowded at certain times. Yeah, I was guessing that ease of boarding was like crowding and at least making sure to communicate. Because I found that folks who don't take the trains that tend to are routinely extremely overcrowded, they don't appreciate like how significant of an issue it is. And again, that it's not just like where it's slightly difficult, but where you flat out can't get on. I mean, anyone can't get on, but especially if someone who's a wheelchair user, would have extreme difficulty getting on certain stuff at certain times. Yeah, I would just make sure to, when that's the case, to communicate that slight difference, because yeah, it's not just about like convenience.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good feedback. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Oh, we got one. I cannot tell who it is.
Sorry, who is that? I can't tell.
Sandra?
Yes, hi, it's Sandra, sorry. I just had kind of a comment question. It was mentioned about how there's a lot of difficulty with people who have physical disabilities, that the accessibility seats aren't available. I personally have had that issue where I have tried to ask kindly for someone to allow me to sit in an accessible chair. They're either very rude or they pretend they don't listen to me, etc. I was just wondering if there was some kind of system or something that we can implement that not the conductor necessarily, but the person that's in the booth could assist with having more of an authority to tell people, hey, you need to allow a person with a disability to sit down, because there was a mention of that being an issue in the surveys.
I think that part of that will be discussed in the next presentation, right? Or we can ask about that.
Yeah, so our next presentation is from the Vice President of Training and Workforce Development, and she'll talk through training for our frontline staff, including our bus operators and rail CSAs, our customer service assistants. So I think that can be something that can be addressed. Kim can talk through some of those, but definitely taking that down, Sandra, as an idea of how do we continue to address that, because it's something that we hear on bus and rail, needing those seats available and having that the courtesy challenge, if you will, of people not respecting individuals with disability and needing a seat.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Once. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Kim's next. Great.
Sit up, beat up.
Sorry, what? You want me to sit up there?
No, you could stay there.
You have a microphone.
Okay, so the next individual that's joining us is Kim Robinson. She is the Vice President of Training and Workforce Development. She is online and she's going to walk through her slide deck. This came about because we heard a lot from the advisory board members, and also, we kind of heard about it in a lot of our surveys, is questions about training. What is the training that is provided to our frontline staff? What are they required to do and what are they not required to do? I will say, from my experience as the Chief Planning Innovation Officer, something that I hear regularly, and I even heard it most recently at the budget town halls, is kneeling the bus. When is kneeling the bus required? When is it not required? And so I think providing some of this information to you all, both to get your feedback, but also to give give some background on how our training process works and what operators are trained on, I think would be useful and something you guys have asked for. So I'm going to kick it over to Kim. I believe you're on. And have Kim run through the slide and present, and then Irma and I will probably jump in on a few pieces because Irma does have some components of the training process as well. Kim?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Molly. My name is Kim Robinson. As mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Training and Workforce Development. I am in my 40s, African American. I have dark red hair, and I have on a multicolored shirt with white, green, burgundy, and pink. Can you guys see my slide?
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. For today's agenda, we're going to have an overview of the ADA training for bus and rail. We'll talk about the phases of training, classroom training, demonstration training, which also means field training, and training enhancements. We'll also talk about the ramp deployment of the rail gap filler, and we'll conclude with ADA communication campaigns that includes annual trainings and video modules.
Hello, everyone. My name is Irma Gomez, as you know me. I'm the ADA Compliance Programs Manager here at CTA, so I'll be talking about my section of the ADA training, which is the classroom training days. These are introductions to the ADA, which I present. They're meant to create awareness around people with disabilities and the importance of public transportation for people with disabilities. For bus training, that is conducted on day 6 of their initial training, and CSA's ADA training is conducted on day 4. The topics that I cover are types of disabilities, which are, we talk about visible and invisible disabilities, the ADA law, importance of the second title of the ADA, and the ADA disability definition. We also talk about wayfinding and the international symbol of accessibility. We discuss on, we watch a video and discuss on societal stigmas, universal access, and how to be an ally. And this is also where I point out where it's important to ask people with disabilities if they need assistance, and to also make sure that if someone is denying assistance, to respect that and respect the person's agency. We also talk about disability etiquette and by different types of disabilities and how to best assist. So this is a big portion of my presentation, which we discuss both SOPs. For bus, making sure that they are letting down the ramp whenever it's requested, and just going through the different SOPs and how general etiquette that they can use to assist different types of disabilities. The importance of language, so people first language, the CTA pet policy, which is service animals, and I really make sure that they understand the 2 questions that they're allowed to legally ask our customers, the RTA fare cards, priority seating, reasonable accommodation policies for employees, accessible features in stations and rails and buses. I also quiz them in this section to see what they remember from the disability etiquette and connect it to the features. How CTA is actively working on accessibility, so the intro to our ASAP program, and also our customer feedback concerns and examples and what each role needs to do better.
All right, I am muted. Thank you, Irma. As mentioned earlier, our training is in 3 phases: classroom, field and demonstration training, and then our 3rd phase of training is a qualification phase where we work to ensure that our trainees are up to standard. The overall objective of our field training is to provide assistance, is to re-emphasize how we provide assistance during all stages of the customer's journey, from boarding to alighting. So from days 15 through 19, excuse me, let me step back 1 second. The bus operator training is 36 days long and includes the 3 phases that I just mentioned. Once we leave the classroom phase, we enter days 15 through 19. The instructors teach our trainees what we call a pre-pull-out system check. So they must check the components of the bus, but directly related to ADA, they must check to see if the bus, before they leave for service, if the bus kneels, if the ramp will deploy, if the locks are working, if there's straps and seat belts. And during this minimum of 5 days instructor-led training for the pre-pullout, the pre-securement procedures, the trainees must inspect the area for hazards before moving the wheelchair, ensure the brakes are released before moving the wheelchair, and they're also supposed to alert the customer, they are instructed to alert the customers at every step. So during this training, we also have wheelchair securement. We have a demonstration for all trainees. We have a 3-to-1 ratio with student to instructors. And we position where we show them how to position one rear wheel against the rear clamp, secure the wheel using the clamp mechanism, attach the restraint strap securely to the chair frame only, or you could connect it to the aisle, or attach both left and right restraints to the mobility device. So during this time, we keep re-emphasizing the things that you just heard.
Hey, Kim, I'm sorry, your audio is cutting out there for a second.
Is it? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Let me get a little closer. I'm sorry. Let me get a little closer to the computer. I apologize. During all of this training, we continue to re-emphasize all the things that were mentioned earlier by Irma. And then we also have each trainee practice. They'll take turns with the wheelchair securement under instructor supervision. The instructors will continue to answer any questions about the pre-pull-out check and the securement procedures. Now, as we lead into day 20, we continue to reinforce, and I think this is more of the questions that you guys have about what happens when we're actually out live in service. So we continue to review all of CTA's SOPs associated with assisting passengers with disabilities or the elderly. So during this time, trainees will be reminded to follow correct procedures for boarding and alighting, prioritize customer and employee safety by making smooth starts and stops. And then we also go to have a system familiarization, which is associated with the garage that you're assigned to. So then your trainees will be introduced to the system map, including key accessibility features, identify wheelchair accessible rail stations, and differentiate between elevated and subway terminals. And then we go back into reinforcing some of the things that were trained on during Irma's classroom training, nonverbal communication on the bus. We do some scenario-based training as a group to have the trainees talk about how they will interact with different scenarios. And then we always tie it back to CTA's SOPs. We have training that includes the trainee response and reflection. And then we talk about words and things using respectful and empowering language. All of this is a recap of what we learned during Irma's classroom training. So I'll lead a little bit into what is not displayed, is displayed, but I'll elaborate a little bit on what we train the new operators during the field training, what we call line instruction. So during this time, we train the operators to operate on site. So as they are approaching a bus stop, they should be assuming that someone there has a disability so that they can be prepared. They should also be visually looking to see if there's someone there with a wheelchair and or who may need assistance. As they approach the bus stop, they are to curve the bus 18 inches if the lift is needed to be, if the ramp is needed to be deployed, 18 inches from the curb. At that time, they should be, if there is someone there in a wheelchair, they should first secure the bus. They should be checking their mirrors to see if the priority seating area is clear or if there's seating available. And then they should ask the customers to wait for the person with a disability to board first. They should make sure that the area is clear before they deploy the lift. If there is a passenger with a disability, they should let that passenger on first. On our bus and on rail that I'll later describe, we teach the operators that customers with disabilities should be the first on and the last off. I know sometimes that's not always the case, but depending on the way the passengers are loading the bus. But to first on and last off, the operator should make the announcement that the ramp is being deployed so that everyone in that area will know. And then at this point, they should ask if the customer needs assistance. If the customer says no, then they should allow the customer to board the bus and pay. If they say yes, then the operator has been instructed to ask them, how do you want us to assist you? We have assisted if required, they have boarded the bus, then we will allow the other passengers to board the bus. I will take one step back and say that once they enter that bus stop, any passengers that are alighting the bus, the operator should be requesting that they exit from the rear. I'll step forward and say that once the customer has boarded, then we should have the we should ask if anyone else needs the ramp or if anyone else needs for the bus to be kneeled in any form of fashion. And then we should, once all the other passengers have boarded, we should get out of our seat. We should go make sure that the customer is that they are secured on the bus if they are requesting to be secured, that we are using the lock on the wheel area, that we hear the click of the lock. And at that point, we should continue to communicate and see if there's anything else that we teach. If there's anything else, you should ask if there's any other additional assistance needed. What we don't ask our operators to do is to ask what stop you're getting off on for security purposes. But if the customer provides that information, then of course we will make sure that we are stopping at the stop that they're requested and understanding that we will be assisting them if required with alighting the bus. If the area is not clear, then the operator must use the PA system to make the announcement that this is priority seating, but they should also request that the passengers move from that area. If the passenger does not move from that area, the operators have been instructed not to force them to move. Like, we're not allowed to force them to move. What we do at that point is the operators are instructed to contact our control center, and also to provide the customer with the ETA of the next bus arrival. Once the passenger is on the bus, if they have been secured on the bus area, then the operators should make sure that they are secured before they move. If the PA system is not working, they should make announcements. They should be loud and clear. And also they should continue to check their mirrors. It's a part of our process, but continue to check their mirrors, internal mirrors on the bus. And then once the passenger is at the stop that they want to alight from, all of the passengers, we would also ask them again to alight the bus from the rear. If they don't, they would alight the bus from either the front or the rear. We would go back, assist the passenger, and then that would conclude what we're doing for the field training. I will say that during a couple of key a couple of key objectives that we have is that I already mentioned is first on, first off. If the ramp is not working, the operators have been taught that they must manually deploy the lift. They must report all defects immediately, and they should continue to communicate with the passengers every step of the way. If there are any obstructions in a bus stop or any area, the operators must contact control immediately, where a supervisor will be deployed. And I'll mention one last thing. If a customer with disability has a personal assistant or someone with them, we have instructed the operators to speak directly to the person with the disability, not their assistant. For my next slide is more so talking about what I mentioned. This is our specific SOP about kneeling and ramp operation. It covers how our bus operator can raise and lower the bus to accommodate customers and adjust to street and curb conditions. Anyone who boards for a life can request the ramp deployment to be raised and lowered without questioning the request. If the customer is elderly or has visible disability, we must kneel the bus without asking. If the customer is using a mobility device such as a walker, a cane after the bus is kneeled, the operator must politely ask if they want to use the ramp and or raise or lower the bus further. If the customer is using a wheel mobility device such as a wheelchair or scooter, the operator must deploy the lift without asking. And as I previously mentioned, if it is not working, the operator must follow the SOP on how to manually deploy the lift, and they must also complete the defective bus card.
So I think we can stop here really quickly just because we're going to jump into CSAs. And so on the bus side, are there any questions for Kim on the training that bus operators receive?
I have two questions. One of the things, I never heard any bus driver asking people to exit in the rear when someone was and I'm on the Damon bus where there's a lot of wheelchair user. I never heard it. I was like, oh, really? They're supposed to ask that. And I think that is a thing that should be enforced for accessibility in Chicago, getting out from the back. I don't know. It's a funny thing here. My question is more, this is all when the person start this job. This is a lot of information. I'm starting a job. I'm a bus driver. I'm like bombarded with all of that. When do you ask me again if I remember any of what I learned or if I have a little pressure?
That's a great question. We have quizzes and tests throughout the 36 days of training. And on our qualification day, which is a qualification phase of training, which is our third phase of training, we do not release a trainee, not just for ADA, for anything that they are not up to standards for. So there is a series of quiz. Actually, there's a quiz on day 3. We go right into quizzes and we have specific questions, and the instructors are asking questions during all three of the phases, but more specifically once we're in the field, once we're in the field training and demonstration and line instruction.
And what about over the
I'm sorry.
years? What about over the years? That's more my question, like following up that the employee is with you for
Yep.
5 years or 10 years.
So currently we see all bus operators for recertification every other year. It's part of our agency safety plan. During that time, ADA is addressed and other components of the training that we have. So we must recertify them every 2 years.
Okay.
As we get deeper in one of the other slides, and I'll mention it now, we are now going to have annual training. It's not a requirement based on our agency safety plan, but we realize that a way to assist with inattention to duty and consistency is to have more interactions with the operators. So we are now, starting in Q1 of 2026, we're going to have annual, what we would call a refresher, not a recertification. Recertification is regulatory, that we're going to have refresher training, and that will include various components and also ADA. And I'm stepping a little bit further and also saying that we are now doing this year, we've started quarterly safety campaigns. Usually we do it based on the season. So if it's winter, we're gearing up for like safe driving, slippery conditions. We are now adding ADA to all 4 of the seasons.
Nice.
Which was not what we were doing initially. Like for winter, like I said, we would be doing slippery conditions and things of that nature for inclement weather. So I'll show what we pass out, which is a little more redefined. It outlines the SOP, but it's in a smaller scope, because I agree, it is a lot of information that's being disseminated. It is a long time, it's 36 days, but it is a lot of information that's being disseminated. I hope that answers your question. And duly noted that we are going to work through a campaign to reinforce exiting the rear bus. So thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. Yes, totally answered my question. Thank you very much.
I had a comment.
Sarah?
So I'm really glad to hear about like the annual refreshers, because on the subject of like kneeling the bus, in terms of like my experiences as a blind person and my colleagues in the National Federation of the Blind, I feel like a lot of us have experienced that whenever a bus driver sees any kind of mobility aid, they automatically assume that we need the bus to be kneeled. And I feel like, especially as a blind person, it kind of makes it more difficult, because then there's noise. It kind of makes it harder for us to figure out like how far we need to step onto the bus, or if we didn't hear the announcement of what route it is and we just need to ask what route it is, and that just makes the process take even longer. When they assumed that we needed the bus to be kneeled, then we just needed to ask a question. So I feel like that's just been a pervasive issue of just like us seeing a mobility aid and assuming that we need the bus to be kneeled rather than asking.
Got it. Thank you.
That's good feedback. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Other questions from the committee?
Okay. I'll add one last thing if you guys are ready for me to go over to the CSAs. I know I had a, yep.
Kim, I think you can run through the CSAs. I just know we're getting tight on time to get a few more presentations. So yeah, you can run through CSAs.
I will. Thank you. Okay. Sorry. For our CSAs, as Irma mentioned, it's the training that she has during the classroom, the same presentation for our CSAs. Our CSA training is 13 days. We have the same 3 phases of training, which is classroom, field and demonstration, line instruction training, and qualification training. For our CSAs, we jump right into talking about the code of conduct and how you deal with difficult situations. One of the situations, there's several situations that we start in a group where we role play. So one of the CSAs will pretend to be a customer, one will pretend to be an employee. We're really trying to engage their thinking, and the learning objective is consistent and superior customer service. So on classroom day 2, trainees are taught how to handle difficult situations and answering difficult questions. One of the many scenarios include a wheelchair stuck in the elevator due to a stuck wheel and escalates from there. As I mentioned, the trainees participate in a team role play to act out the scene and are debriefed afterwards on how to handle the situation. So during this time of the training, we have various scenarios. We want to kind of have a group and a team environment with the trainees for them to form a camaraderie themselves to be with their fellow classmates. So we have them role play as a customer I mentioned, and as a customer and as an employee. And this specific situation, if this happened, then the employee would apologize. They will continue to communicate. They will continue to communicate every step with the customer. They will contact our control center for further directions, but they will also go to look for a supervisor to see what needs to, if a supervisor can assist and give some directions on how to correct the situation. The employee will have to will complete a report to manager on everything that happened with the situation, and then that report will be submitted to the appropriate department. On day 3, the trainees take a rail station tour, starting at the unpaid station of the platform, showing the elevators and the wheelchair accessible turnstiles. They're shown the kiosks and maps and bulletins, the venture machine, how to operate the venture machine, how to read the maps, bulletins. There are employee bulletins about things that are happening within the CTA, and then also the elevator status boards, where we train the trainees that once they start their shift, they must call the elevator status line and update the elevator status board for every station that's affected. They must do that every 15 minutes to get on the 15th minute of every hour to get a real-time update on what's happening with the elevators within CTA service area. So what that would mean is when the passengers, obviously you guys may or may not notice, when the passengers come in, we should, if it's someone who has a disability and we are assisting them, we should let them know that the station that they're requesting to alight, there's an issue with the elevator. We can ask them, they have instructed us to ask a couple of things, whether they want to ride back to a different station, or we give them alternate routes on going forward to another station in the direction that they were potentially headed to. So we give them information about that the elevator is not working at that time, but not working at that time. I'll go to my next slide and I'll continue on. On day 8, the instructors reinforce CTA's SOP with assisting seniors and customers with disability on the rail station and a gap filler procedures. Similar to what happened on with bus, the trainees are, we discuss how to follow the correct procedures with assisting customers and securing and releasing where the interior wheelchairs on the interior of the rail train, prioritize customer and employee safety on the rail system at different locations and platforms. And then we do system familiarization, where we go through the system map, we point out key accessibility features, the gap filler, what is our required using the MUDC key to unlock and open a gap filler, tilting the gap filler and placing one set of stabilizing bars between the sensitive edges and the edge of the door steel, securely positioning gap fillers and standing on it to secure its stability, assisting the customer if they need help securing a wheelchair, and how to remove the gap filler. So as I mentioned, similar to what I described with bus, the CSA should be visually looking, and they must so they should be, they should first, if someone is asking for assistance, or we know that based on visually they need assistance, We should be helping them with payment if they need through the mobile validator, or if they need assistance through the venture machine. At this point, we should be asking the same questions. If they need assistance, and how should we assist them? We should ask them what stop that they're going to get off on. If the customer is making a stop within the next 3 stops, then the CSA must call on the radio. If it's 4 or more stops, the CSA has been instructed to actually telephone the control center so that the CSA or operator will know that the person is getting off, the location that they're getting off. The gap fillers are located near car 4 and rail car 8 based on the station. And the same thing applies. It's the passenger should be the first one on and the first one off. We should also, after if we are assisting, we should be bringing them onto the train backwards. And if it's an incline for one of the ramps, we should be bringing them in backwards. If a passenger chooses to sit in a seat instead of being in their device, long as it's not blocking the aisle. And the CSA should personally go up to the RTO and say, there is someone on your train currently now that will need assistance at this station, even though they have already called the CSA and or telephone the control center, but they should personally walk up to the CSA. Once the person is secured, if they choose to secure themselves, their brakes should be on if we're assisting with the strap or not. Once they're secured and they're getting ready to go to their destination, if the operator is assisting or the CSA assisting, they should make an announcement saying that they are assisting a customer so that everyone aboard can understand that there could possibly be a slight delay. The doors won't be closing immediately. And we should continue to communicate with the customer during all of this, everything that's happening, us unsecuring them, us deploying the gap filler, and making sure that they have alighted the train. A couple of other things I'll mention really quickly is that the gap filler, I did hear some, when I met with Laura, I met with Karen from Access Living about the gap fillers, some complaints about the gap filler not being deployed correctly. So we are updating our communication or being deployed upside down. The gap filler clearly has a welcome aboard sign that should be faced up. All operators, CSAs and bus operators I mentioned should be reporting any defects. And we also train them about bathroom access for individuals with disability. We how that process works. Well, we should allow them to use the restroom. If there's anything that happens in the restroom where we see that something is inoperable, that also should be reported. We're instructed to ask for an ID, for the person's ID, and then we allow them into the restroom. We also, okay, I'm gonna say we also continue to talk about all the things that Irma has talked about. And then my last page is just a description of how to use the gap fillers.
Thanks. Any questions on the CSA role and what happens at the rail stations?
I think this highlights why it needs to be a more serious role, where people are treated properly, but that's it. I don't have any questions. Does anyone have?
No.
No, but yeah, I would concur with that. It's a more important role than it looked like, and I think in the interaction, we might not have the impression that we can go to the CSA people. Just, yeah.
Yeah, so but thank you for, your presentation and like all of this information.
Yeah, I think, Kim, you covered most of this on the bus and rail ADA communication and the additional outreach efforts that you are doing there. And then on the video modules, I know you and Irma have been working together to have videos be played at the garages. So this sort of, Delphine, to your point about ongoing touches with the operators and ongoing touches with our frontline staff, we are working through our video screens that are at the stations, or excuse me, at the bus terminals to allow us to provide video information to our operators. That it's constant. Kim, is there anything that we missed that you wanted to cover? I know this is a lot of information, and I think it's also just important to reference. And with Kim providing this, like it's very detailed. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and a lot of different touch points that Kim and her team have with operators to make sure that accessibility is on the forefront of their mind. But Kim, is there anything else that we missed that you wanted to cover?
No. I appreciate being allowed to present. And if there's any follow-up questions, Molly, please forward them to me if someone thinks about something afterwards.
Absolutely. We know where to find you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate the conversation. Really appreciate your presentation and how much you've been willing to discuss accessibility and think through how we can improve it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. For just to be careful, because one of Delphi may need to leave early, we're going to make a small change in the agenda and have a presentation on the wayfinding subcommittee report by Delphi.
Thank you. Yes, so the wayfinding committee met 2 weeks ago on Friday. We had a small attendance than we had in our first meeting, and maybe it was just a matter of timing, but just want to repeat that everybody's welcome. If you're not officially on the wayfinding committee, if you are in the CTA advisory committee, or if you're interested by wayfinding issue, please feel free to join when we have those meetings. This specific meeting was very interesting, and what's great about, I think, the wayfinding committee, as well as how there's a follow-up with the points that kind of were identified as priorities by the member of the committee. So really appreciate that. So this time was about all the audio, how can audio signage and audio information can be improved. And we heard from Tony, sorry, I don't know which service exactly he's from, but he's
Customer Communications.
Customer Communication, and he presented 2 very interesting, the information, the audio signage and audio information at the train station about the next arrival and different options. And I think what was great is how he presented also what is been done, because it's not happening in Chicago right now. So more examples from other city, and like having discussion about what's the kind of pros and cons for each approach, and kind of almost also small of a vote. So there was kind of a preference for a certain type of model. So that was really great. But then also I think what was particularly really well received by the committee is the presentation on this small box of how can audio information at train stations can be provided. There was discussion about the localization of that box, like one maybe at where the CSA person is, and one maybe on the platform somewhere. But I think that was really nice that everybody could provide feedback about the type of information they would have, and it was about the different accessibility features, the elevator, the escalator, the next trains, and then available in multiple language. So it was a simple device, but I was very great to be able to provide feedback on that. And then based on the priority identified in the committee, we wanted to discuss the website. And it was nice to, for the first time, had a walkthrough through the website and accessibility features. The improvement are really great. It's nice to see so much more that now we can find on the website. There was questions about organization of the websites, maybe information that are missing still and would like to see. But it was, again, always good to have that information being provided. And I think it would be worth it for the CTA to maybe make a post about that, or sharing to the public about the great improvements that have been done to the page. Because really, I think now there's a lot of information and it's all in one place. So it's really good. Good job. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's someone that always say, like, give me the information, I'll make my choice. I think that's a great thing. So that was the main discussion. For the next meeting, we'll have presentation. Again, we're continuing a little bit, I think, around the device, right? The assistive mobility, the assistive technology, maybe that CT is considering.
I think that's with Tony, like where he's at.
Yeah. So we'll continue having presentation, but a great discussion, and I think good feedback, definitely, with the interaction with the team. It's great.
Great. Thank you. I do want to mention before we let Cara go, since taking attendance, Milton and Sandra are both online.
Welcome. Great. Thank you. Sarah, do you have?
Yeah, like I just wanted to bring up a topic for the next subcommittee meeting, because
if we can hold off on that, because that's for new business.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, that was my bad. Sorry. Any questions? Good. Thank you. And now, the Safety Transit Ambassadors update presented by Carabiner, Vice President.
Transit Community Safety Workshop.
I am reading what is on my little thing, so. Fair enough, this is what is written.
Hey, hi, good afternoon. My name is Cara Bader. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Innovation here at CTA. I'm a white woman in her late as possible as you can be 30s. I have medium length red hair and I'm wearing a colorful plaid jumpsuit today. So I'm here to present a recap of the Transit Community Safety Workshop that was held in late September. Early September. It was held in late August. Sorry, the time is slipping away from us. And CTA hosted over 50 attendees, including and 25 CTA staff for a half-day workshop to learn and engage, supporting CTA's comprehensive safety strategy and to further the development of a Safe Ride Ambassadors pilot. The workshop engaged not only cross-functional partners at CTA, but organizations with subject matter expertise in the space of community safety, mental and behavioral health, transit leadership advocacy, and then CTA executive leadership. And you can see on the slide, the types of groups that were represented included CBOs, health and social service professionals, public safety organizations, advocates, and then government and our transit peers. And there is a photo capturing a lot of the attendees from the day. The theme of the workshop was safety through presence, partnership, and people, which aligns with Acting President Learson's priorities for the agency. And we were convened by Flora Castillo of Pivot Strategies, who served as MC and established that the goals of the day would be to provide transparency on our current challenges, hotspots, and how we're responding to date. Introduce the idea of a Safe Ride Ambassador program. Gather feedback from our stakeholders to think about program design and implementation tailored to the need of our riders, our community partners, and the availability of our resources. And then a key goal to foster a sense of ownership, build trust, and build ongoing channels for collaboration. And there's a photo on this slide of Acting President Learson, who gave a welcome at the day, as did Chairman Lester Barclay from the Chicago Transit Board. This slide shows logos from a subset of organizations that were there. I don't think we could fit them all on one slide, but we did our best. It includes University of Chicago Crime Lab, Elevated Chicago, Chicago Neighborhood Technologies, the City of Chicago, CMAP, the Institute for Nonviolence, VEHO, Chicago CRED, the Park District, Advocate Healthcare, Cambridge Systematics, AARP, RTA, the Civic Consulting Alliance, Palenque LSNA, Metra, Thresholds, Metropolitan Family Services, Access Living, ATU 241, as well as ATU 308, I believe was there too, though I don't know.
Yes, they're on there.
Oh, yep, staring right at it. Garfield Park Community Council, the Chicago Police Department, Haymarket Center, Kids Off the Block, BOMA, Active Transportation Alliance, the Chicago Community Trust, who served as our host, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and I believe that covers everyone. We heard a presentation from our Chief Operating Officer, Veronica Alanis, and she really took us through the complex challenges that are present for our riders and frontline staff. And then CTA staff presented on a variety of topics. Our Vice President of Security talked about the different nature of challenges that we face on the system, those that range from criminal activity to code of conduct violations, and then unruly behavior or behavioral health concerns that aren't criminal in any way, but do present a condition for our riders that may make them uncomfortable or may lead to a perception of insecurity on the system. We presented a review of the data from our customers, some of the data that you already heard today, to give their voice and the perspectives that they experience across the system. And our operations team walked through the implications of a major disruption on our service. So we looked at a chart that showed what happens when a train is held for 25 minutes due to a passenger blocking the door, and the downstream implication on service that might cascade for a number of hours after one of these events. And then here's a photo of Veronica talking to the pieces of the puzzle and tools in our toolkit today. And I'll cover some of them on this slide. We have a lot of resources that we invest and direct towards security on the system to date. And then we want to be working with our partners to add new tools and layers to that strategy. So this graphic shows the puzzle pieces that are kind of in the puzzle today, as well as the ones we might bring in. And that includes our frontline staff, like our CSAs and CSRs that are often interacting with passengers in our stations and spaces. The outreach teams like Haymarket and Thresholds that we're already working with. Chicago Police Department and Suburban Police Department, which we have agreements with for them to access our system, to conduct policing activities. Our CTA technology and infrastructure teams, our technology department installs and maintains a variety of communication tools that allow us to monitor conditions on our system and communicate rapidly in real time when there are security incidents. And our infrastructure team manages things like fencing, as well as security systems that help us keep our infrastructure in clean and quality condition, and the right people maintaining our infrastructure, and keep out people that maybe aren't interested in maintaining our infrastructure. We also talked a little bit about the new Strategic Decision Support Center, that's SDSC room, the role of our control center, and our partnered contract security guards that are not police resources, but are doing code of conduct as well as eyes on the street type work. And then the two green pieces are some of the future initiatives we're currently building out, one of which is the Safe Ride Ambassadors program that I'll talk about a little more. And then the overall concept of welcoming spaces, which is a priority for Acting President Learson, as well as other stakeholders, not only here and on the board, that if our station is vibrant, if it is a place that people want to be in, that people feel safe in and can move through easily, that's a welcoming space, and that in and of itself is a deterrent towards the activity that might make people feel unsafe. We did have a panel of our peer agencies that have Safe Ride Ambassador programs, and they spoke to those programs. Flora's team convened this and helped provide that expertise during the meeting. We received insights from Andrew Wilson, who's the Executive Director of Safety and Security at TriMet in Portland. Jason Scott, who's the Deputy Chief of Progressive Policing in the Community Engagement Bureau at BART, which is the Bay Area, and Leslie Canderas, the General Manager of Metro Transit, which serves the Twin Cities. Each leader gave a short presentation on the development of their Safety Ambassador program, how it moved from pilot to scale and how it was resourced, and some overall challenges and successes that they faced. Some commonalities in these presentations included starting small and developing a program over multiple years. Most partners had a pilot program that took about 2 years to develop and started as small as teams of 2 to 4. but now growing to teams that might be 70 in a system, might be more than 100 in a different system, and how that over 2 to 5 year period, that growth occurred. They talked about a focus of these resources on visibility, empathetic engagement, and de-escalation, and how that crisis and safety ambassadors may complement other security resources like a transit police or a police guard, but they're working in coordination and they're layering them, and they themselves are not a policing presence and aren't necessarily intended to be so. And also a call out was Metro Transit, our peer in the Twin Cities, actually received dedicated funding through the fiscal cliff solution that the state of Minnesota passed a couple of years ago. And so had, I believe, nearly $2 million to execute their pilot program. And on this slide, you can see a photo of one of the breakout discussion tables listening to a part of the presentation of the day. We then spent about an hour at the end of the program on a breakout activity that allowed stakeholders to share and provide feedback on what the pieces of the comprehensive approach they believe would be most necessary for a safe ride ambassador. And so participants collaborated to articulate their vision for a safe ride ambassador by building the body of the person through the tools and practices and technologies that they would need. Each table built their ambassador toolkit and shared it out. And they reviewed their toolkit based on 4 real world scenarios that were provided based on situations we often encounter. And these situations were models, but they really come from our rider feedback, our control center reports, and the things that lead to service interruptions we saw earlier in the day. The image on the slide shows the way that the breakout activity was conducted. There's sort of a cartoony type body, and the head of the body was where we talked about what overall response model would you like to see. On the left arm, we talked about the technology that a Safe Ride ambassador would need to access. On the right arm, the partners and partnerships they would need to develop. In the body, it's the overall policies and practices that they should embody. That's where we talked about that empathetic response, de-escalation, a service-first approach. And then on the left leg, we talked about strategies for evaluating success and reporting KPIs. And then on the right leg, strategies for communicating out the existence of this pilot, the existence of the resource that should be promoting safety and communicating with our riders on how they're feeling on the system. So the feedback and outcome of the discussions will directly inform a scope for a partnership pilot that we hope to launch later this year, and different types of models that we could conduct through those pilots, whether there's something like a violence interruption model, or a behavioral health response model, maybe a youth engagement model, or some simplification of a few of these. At the end of our breakout activity, we did survey the room on 3 of the most important qualities that they felt defined a successful program. And the key themes that came out of those qualities included welcoming and engaging demeanor, community and cultural literacy, streamlined communication and dispatch approach, knowledgeable about external services and partners, not reinventing the wheel, collaborating with those partners, embodying trauma-informed care and harm reduction principles and trainings, and a high visibility. And so there's 2 photos on this slide. They both show breakout tables conducting their activity. And then we asked the experts in the room what a successful program would achieve. What does the future look like in which we have a scaled Safe Ride Ambassador program? And participants noted that they would not only expect to see increase of feelings of safety and lowered crime, but they pointed to an increased ridership and rider confidence. They highlighted accountability and communication as features of CTA running this program. And they also highlighted the expectation to see increased respect for others generally. This slide also shows 2 more photos of the breakout activities that are being conducted with the ambassador icon in the middle of the table and a variety of sticky notes representing the ideas and suggestions that were gathered from folks at the table and coordinated by our moderators. So what are we doing with all of this information? A couple of next steps. One, we did conduct a post-event survey of attendees, and we're currently reviewing those results. We anticipate documenting the notes as well as the presentations into a summary report that'll be sent to participants, the advisory board here, our CAB and board early this month. And then, like I said, we will be building a process to explore these pilot partnerships and how we might reach out to partners or identify who could provide these services. Looking to balance speed to market. We know that this is an idea that has had a lot of excitement for a long time, but the need for that long-term learning and a scalable process that can grow if it's successful. So we do anticipate being able to pursue those partnerships later this year. And then finally, this is one final photo of the wrap-up discussion at one of the tables in the room. I think that's it.
Thank you. Folks have questions? Anyone else? No. So we get a better sense, and I appreciate wanting to make sure that there is something that is cohesive, but I do think getting some service delivery, acknowledging that it might be a process like needs to iterate is important. So do we know, so you think within the year, is that like communicating with possible partners or having some kind of program before the end of the year?
Yeah, I think we would, I anticipate that we'll be able to at least put out like the sort of scope or, you know, here's what we're trying to achieve, who could respond to us by the end of the year. I think what we've realized in discussion of what we heard is some of the things that are necessary for success, especially how does this resource get to where they need to be on a day-to-day basis? Like how are we deciding where they're deployed? Or if there is an incident, how does someone get there appropriately or talk in real time with the right resource? Those are complex conversations. And if you just sort of like push someone out onto the system, they might not have the resources necessary to succeed. They might not know who they can call. We might not have set that technology up. So we're also trying to be mindful of moving as fast as we can move in a way that that partner is set up for success. And so we are looking at sort of drafts of those scope now, like what are the must-haves, and then having those conversations of, you know, is it realistic to think that that exists right now? If not, can we provide it? And we're trying to sort of triage that in real time to figure out that medium, because I think, you know, we don't want to process this to death. We all know that we could spend 2 years thinking in concept of what might be necessary and speccing it out. And then by the time we've done something, no one exists that can do it. I do say very authentically that we're trying to balance that speed to market with a sense of the necessary conditions that if we are successful, we can grow from it instead of having a pilot that then has to sort of wash away and then start all over again.
Okay, I appreciate that. I will say, like, I think for a variety of reasons why it, you know, it would be good to get something on the books. I hear you.
That lead me to a question. Thank you for asking that. How does the other agencies work communicating about that? Because I'm just trying to think about all the presentation we had today and like how personal security is such an issue at multiple level. And I think people knowing that there's an action on it, you know, I think the maintenance and cleanliness is one of the things. I think CT is trying to show that they're more active on it. And I think it works, you know, like, you know, again, I said that last time, but like changing the narrative. Mm-hmm. So what was the way the communication, the other agencies were like, is it coming? Like we take like showing the public that you take those issue and yes, maybe there's nothing, but we are doing something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what was the?
Yeah, I think the peers that we work with talked about, and it was very helpful that a number of people at CTA staff sat in on pre-conversations with those peers, so we were able to have deeper dives. I think things that were really helpful that I heard is one, success takes time, but you have to demonstrate success early on. Mm-hmm. Like that's a push and pull that we often deal with. And so find those quick wins that you can communicate. And I do think that that's why each program branded their ambassadors in a way that they're visible on the system, whether it's they're wearing a vest or they have a certain button or name. It's a way of establishing that presence. Because I think a thing that I personally heard a number of times is that especially in the space of behavioral intervention, it is about long-term trust building. And so their biggest success stories came from relationships that they did build with riders over multiple months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months. And it might not have been it might not have been something that the first time there was an incident they could do anything about, but because they built that trusting presence, maybe one day they were able to at least politely encourage that person to step off the system into a waiting area where they could maybe calm down a little bit and wait for another provider to arise. And because the nature of that work is very slow and hard to see, they talked about making sure that you have the communication strategy and you can bridge both of those gaps.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think I've probably raised this, and I don't know what the grant funding for is for them anymore, but in your plans, are you thinking about looping in the 590 teams?
Yeah, I think, one thing that has probably come up as we have talked at peers in Chicago about this is that we're still probably not doing enough peer learning of what's the Parks Department doing or what is CDPH doing. So I think we're both trying to open up those communication channels and have done that. And then trying to figure out where is there enough resourcing that we can maybe have another team work on our system versus, to be honest, I think what we're hearing from a lot of people is we're having trouble with our resourcing. We're having trouble retaining people. So I can come help you, but that means I'm not going to go to this place that one day. And I think that's something we heard that our peer cities also face. This is not unique to CTA or Chicago. And so I think we want to start with just opening up those channels of communication for shared learning as we try to scale the resources. And then, at any point in which I think there are other providers and teams that could be supplementing what we do, we're definitely always welcome, similar to how we partner with DFSS. Those are DFSS funded resources, and we welcome all the support for our riders as we can get.
Thank you. Champ? Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And with that, we are the facilitators report. Irma Gomez.
Thank you. In the past quarter, I conducted 15 frontline trainings alongside with 2 bus familiarization training at CPS Southside Academy and Go Dogs Go Service Animal Group, as well as providing information about accessibility projects at 6 mobile city hall community events and recently a senior health fair hosted by Alderman Cardona. In addition to the feedback received at the Access Living Town Hall and National Federation for the Blind meeting, Jeremy, Senior Manager of Traffic Planning, and I recently hosted an open table event on September 23rd here at CTA. We invited organizations that represent individuals who are blind, visually impaired to give us feedback on the new decal pilot that will go on the tactile bus stop signs, giving route number and direction. Some feedback given to us by the attendees were that the decal raised lettering didn't have enough contrast and the lettering wasn't as pronounced, as well as the signs being a little bit too high on the pole. Some locations for the pilot that were given included Social Security offices, major destinations like Navy Pier and Wrigleyville, and diagonal intersections such as Damon, Milwaukee, North Avenue. CTA held 3 town halls meeting to provide an overview of potential budget scenarios based on funding received or not. It was also an opportunity to learn from the public what CTA should take into consideration based on funding levels for 2026. There were about 440 attendees and received good feedback in terms of what riders and residents value and areas where we can improve. In addition, Molly presented a similar presentation as the town hall meeting at the combined CTA Citizens Advisory Board and AD Advisory Committee meeting on September 22nd, where both committees were able to ask and state their concerns. I'm excited to share that last week we installed the first e-paper bus stop sign on Ashland at Chicago. Please go check it out. We will install the remaining e-paper bus stop signs throughout in the next coming weeks. I will email you all the list on the remaining 16 locations and installation times. The e-paper bus stop signs will also be installed at 3 of the RPM stations, 2 e-paper bus stop signs at each station. Since the opening of the RPM stations, we received feedback about the current benches on the platforms and communicated that information to the RPM team. They understand that the benches are not customer friendly and are working to replace the benches at those 4 RPM stations in the next 6 weeks. In terms of an update on Racine Blue Line Station construction project, we anticipate the opening of the head house and closure of the Loomis Station access point in the middle of October. Finally, CTA's frequent bus network will be adding 4 new routes in late December: number 9 Ashland, number 12 Roosevelt, number 72 North, and number 81 Lawrence. These bus routes will be scheduled every 10 minutes or better between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. Based on the last 6 weeks, ending on 9/27, the 9 routes added to the frequent bus network in the spring are up 6% in ridership. The 4 routes added in the summer are up 4%. The 4 routes added in the fall are up 6% as well, while bus routes that are not part of the frequent networks are flat in terms of ridership growth. And that concludes my facility report.
Any questions?
Do you know if they, for the Racine visit that you emailed about, is there a plan for reschedule, or did you have enough people for next week?
I did not. I only got 1 response back, so we're gonna reschedule that.
Anything else? All right, thank you. And then old business. Does anyone have any old business they would like to bring up? Shockingly, I don't think even I have any old business to bring up. First time in a while, probably. Irma, any new business?
No new business from my end. We will need to have a special meeting for the 2026 dates, and we need a quorum for that.
That is important. And Sarah, you had
In-person quorum.
In-person
Specifically.
in-person quorum. We will make sure to stress that.
Just that I wanted to bring a topic to the wayfinding subcommittee of the continuing issue of trains at stations that have that serve multiple routes, not announcing what route they are audibly at all. So I think that's a very important issue for the wayfinding subcommittee to discuss.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I would also raise, and I think this probably already comes up, but given there was feedback in the survey about signage, like integrating the things that people raise the most, including, add underground stations, improving the signage, that's something, since people seem to, to also factor in.
I have new business.
All right.
So my one piece of new business, and it's good news. So for the budget for 2026, we're having to submit 3 budget scenarios that we talked about a little bit, but in the stable, so the gap is filled, or the invest budget, I do want to let folks know that we are going to add an additional accessibility staffer who will be reporting up to Irma. So we will have yet another person working solely on accessibility. And this is both a reflection of, I think, how Irma has grown the accessibility work at the agency to have more focus and bring a lot more attention to it. And so wanting to be a force multiplier with Irma to give her more resources so she can do even more good work. So wanted to let you guys know that is for the invest and what we call the stable budget, like the gap being filled. Obviously, it's not going to happen if we have to make service cuts. And I would say, we'll have a budget will be released early next week. So you guys will be able to see our budget early next week.
Could that be sent out to the committee just as a?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you. And really appreciate you guys adding a staffer on this. And yes, I think like Irma, really appreciate the work you've done, but the commitment that CTA is showing to caring about disability.
Absolutely.
Yes. Agree with that. That's wonderful news.
Any other new business?
I have a question. What are you looking for that other staffer? Like what kind of experience or what kind of
Yeah, we want to, it's going to be like a coordinator level role. So it's going to be somebody that, we're looking for maybe earlier in their career. They're going to really assist Irma in some of the training stuff that's happening, the outreach activities that Irma does, really freeing Irma up to do more of like more policy work. We'll also look for the coordinator to help drive some projects. We do have a couple PMs that support projects within our team and other teams, but also just having more resources to help continue to drive projects forward. We'll also look for that person as well.
Do you have a job post? I'm just asking because
I do not yet have a job description or like a JSN or anything like that. I don't have any of that yet, but you guys will be the first to know when I have it.
Yeah, I can share, especially at UIC and with DHC, the staff and alumni. We might have someone.
Absolutely. We're looking for, definitely probably someone, not as many years of experience. So that's the level of experience.
And then I guess this would have been old business, but just making me think about it with like Kim's presentation on training, just circling back on the importance of making sure that complaints, and there's like that data component of if we were having continuous complaints, like, okay, there's a secondary check on evaluation for garages or stations where there seem to be repeated.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Anything else? Anyone online? We will not have voting on the new dates. And so with that, can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Before I forget, hopefully the next meeting time is January 12th. We will have to still set that. But theoretically, the next meeting time is January 12th at 1:30. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay. And Sarah seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, guys have it. So we adjourned at 3:38 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you.